Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just to bring the debate back into context and to assist those who might be looking on, and then those who might also be wondering what exactly this legislation that we're here to debate today is all about. What are the changes this legislation would bring about? Why this legislation is absolutely necessary. I'd use my time and the opportunity to just bring things back into context. As legislators, Madam Speaker, as I've said on many occasions before, we can attempt to assist the criminal justice system by improving the processes. That is about as far as we can go. This bill, Madam Speaker, is an important one as it attempts to modernize parts of the criminal justice system and provides for the use of technology that is absolutely necessary. I sat here today, Madam Speaker, waiting with some level and degree of anticipation to hear what were the reasons, how could the opposition justify to the population out there who rightly are requiring us as legislators to fix the problems, to make it easier for investigations, to make it easier to get successful convictions of the criminals, and to bring a stop or pause to the criminality that is taking place out there. And I have to say I am saddened. I am saddened that no speaker on the other side has put forward a single justifiable reason as to why this legislation should not be supported today. Not a single one of the two previous speakers who were practitioners in the courts have provided us, the citizens, and more importantly, us here in the chamber, with any reason for pause, for reflection as to why this legislation shouldn't be supported. Because you see, this legislation provides for one, Madam Speaker, the use of different identification procedures. And to break that down for the lay people, what we are doing here is absolutely necessary. The archaic system of identifying a perpetrator, a victim of crime having to go and touch the shoulder of someone who has perpetrated a crime against them. Let's say one of the most heinous crimes of rape, and to continue to require the victims of crime to go through that process. That is what the UNC is telling the population they want to continue, and I'm wondering why. Because this legislation, Madam Speaker, one of the things it does is now provide for one-way mirror systems, and I want the population to understand that. It is the simple processes. So to come here and to scream and shout about resources, and the last speaker talking about toilet paper and copy paper in police stations, I want the population to know that the audio-visual recording equipment is already in police stations throughout Trinidad and Tobago. You see, it's a constant scream and constant cry and the constant attempt to mislead the population that we're bored of now. That we have to sit here and listen to them every single week mislead. Right there in Belmont Police Station, there's an audio-visual suite. Riverside Plaza, there's an audio-visual suite. And throughout the country, in the various divisions, there are audio-visual suites. And to explain to the population the benefit which this legislation is bringing forward of the use of video and audio recording, it runs contrary to all that they've said before. Because you see, the member for Barataria Sawa talking about confessions and admissions and this type of audio-visual equipment gives the best opportunity to get it right. What we're doing with this legislation is allowing the use of cameras and audio microphones to see how the police are asking questions, how they're interviewing witnesses. So when that gets to a trial, the jury can now see firsthand the statement that was given. I heard him try to mislead, as is usual for him, and his insults that he's continuously throwing across the floor. no practice experience whatsoever, and having the audacity to talk about carrying a red bag up into court, up and down. I have never read a single judgment attributed to his name. But what this audio-visual equipment does is it allows a jury to look on and see the demeanor of a witness. When the witness is given a statement, it gets rid of the allegations of witnesses being beaten to give admissions. So let the UNC tell the population today, because they failed to do so far, why they don't want that. Audio-visual equipment protects not only the person being interrogated by the police, but also the police officers themselves. Because very often what happens when you get to trial is a witness may then want to change maybe a confession and admission and say, well, hold on, it was beaten out of me. But if we now as a jury can see the whole recording in front of us on a screen of how the statement was taken, what the witness said, that the witness was on that side of the desk, the police officer on this side of the desk. Where is he beating? So immediately eradicate that. We haven't heard any attempt by any speaker. And you know why? Because this is impossible. It's impossible. So you get rid of that whole line of cross-examination in a trial. Because you can now see as the jury, the court sitting there can see exactly how the accused who has been charged with a crime, what it is he or she said to the police in an admission or a confession. But no, come here and talk about toilet paper. Come here and always this demeaning attitude. Completely misleading, attempting to mislead the population. That's to do with the interviews and admissions. So there is absolutely no justifiable reason that any sensible law-abiding, and maybe this is it, because I sat there wondering what it is, but no sensible law-abiding citizen would want to prevent video audio recordings being used and utilized. And that's one of the main pillars of this legislation here today. The other one is the use of different identification procedures. And I heard the first speaker, Madam Speaker, for the opposition, talk about there's not protection. And they like to throw in these keywords. It's obviously handed to them by someone, right? So the bill is sterile. The bill will do nothing to protect women. Well, first of all, that is completely refuted. The bill not only protects victims who are men or women, but use the example I've just given. Let's talk about the identification procedure now. As it currently stands, we have an archaic identification procedure where a victim of crime, as I just said, must go and touch the shoulder. So you're looking at these people in front of you, and you must now go and touch the shoulder and identify which of these men it is that raped you. And the legislation we're bringing here today is to now provide a process that protects everyone along the way that I'll get into in a short while. But now, why would you want to say that you can't use a one-way mirror where the victim of crime was had to be violently treated in the worst possible manner? Why can't she now stand behind a mirror system, identify which of the 8 or the 12 individuals in front is in fact the person who perpetrated that crime? The UNC must explain to the population here today why they want to prevent that from happening, why they want to keep us in this archaic way of identification. And it is complete rubbish to say that rights are not being balanced, an infringement of fundamental rights. Because when you look at the legislation, and maybe they don't, maybe it's just pick up the piece of paper in the room and come and read. But when you look at the legislation, the first 20-something pages of it, which go step by step, describing the new identification methodology throughout the whole thing. I counted it. It is 6 or 7 stages. The first stage is at 12A. Before any identification procedure takes place, a record shall be taken by the investigating officer of the first description of the suspect given by the eyewitness. You know what that does? It protects not only the victim, not only the police officer who's investigating, but it also protects potentially the person who may be wrongly accused. What it means is the victim must now say, prior to an identification, This is what I recall the person looking like, being like, etc., etc., and that is properly recorded. And every single step, all 6 stages require in law that it must be properly recorded, that the people, not only the person who is the victim, but also the accused has an opportunity to see it, etc. And you know what we have to hear here today? We have to hear the opposition stand up, Madam Speaker, and tell the population, don't do that. Because it's giving defense lawyers an opportunity to cross-examine and to say, oh, well, the police officer didn't have a notebook and the police officer recorded what I said wrong. But you see, that is typical UNC style. And to hear them on the other side here today try to mislead the population again, I want to remind the population through you, Madam Speaker, the irony, the hypocrisy of having to listen, pass legislation, and you can't implement it because they have no resources. We have heard here time and time again, the UNC on their way out passed and proclaimed the children's legislation, the suite of children's legislation, without establishing a single resource, right? And then, I'm coming to that. And then the same person, high-ranking official in the UNC, is the same person who then turned around and sued the state time after time after proclaiming the legislation without even a building in place to fulfill the requirements of the legislation. But that is not how this administration does it. So come and scream about toilet paper. Come and scream about copy paper. The fact is, the police service already has the resources for it. And we cannot sit here and allow the non-use of the one-way mirrors and allow no use of audio-visual equipment. And I continue to ask the question, and the population will ask the question, why is it that the opposition members do not want us to use this technology? Because it makes a trial that much better, not only for the victim, who will get his or her day in court, but also for the accused. Because the accused can't be beaten in front of a camera. The accused can't be threatened in front of a camera and audio-visual. And they will get the demeanor. The whole identification process, Madam Speaker, the 20-odd pages of it set out every step of the way how to use the video and audio recording of the eyewitness. It is the use of technology throughout the whole process. So you don't have to sit down and sketch. It even sets out for the use of photographs. I heard the facetiousness on the other side. They're still using black and white photographs. They say, how does he know that? How does he know that? When last has he gone to a police station to identify anything? It also provides the protection. So the previous speaker, the first speaker, pretending rights not being balanced, infringement of fundamental rights, completely contrary to that submission, is the bill before us. At every single stage, there's protection built in for all of the players in this process, for the investigator, for the victim, who is called the eyewitness, and for the person who's accused. I don't have the time to go into every clause, but it sets out there even so many processes that allows for, okay, eyewitness, do you want to identify? It provides for the different scenarios. So whereas there's this archaic methodology that currently exists, that you have to go and touch the shoulder, etc., it is even now providing for consensual outside of police station identification. And what that means is, as happens in other countries, you go to the scene of the crime, you get 20 people to walk around, and the parties are consenting, okay, eyewitness, now try and point out who it is in those 20 people. So you're not even bound by the police station environment. And this is where we are looking to take this country forward as legislators, because we have no control over the judicial process, and that is only part of it. Then Division 3, you get to the interviews and oral admissions. The one problem I had with this bill, and spoke to the Attorney General this morning, and he explained it and I understood it, is that even when we're going to use the video audio recording equipment, we're still requiring the police to record things in writing. And he explained to me it was the independent senators that wanted that. Maybe one day in the future we can move away from that, because that slows down the process. But to stand here and not hear one single plausible, legitimate explanation why this shouldn't be supported. It bothers me. We must get out of this role of hypocrisy and listening to the irony of resources, 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 when they were infamous for it. The next thing that this bill does, and throughout the process, Madam Speaker, completely contrary to what was being suggested, it provides protection for everyone, as I've just said. Another thing that is fundamental and that we're to be applauded for bringing here today is Special Division 4, Special Measures and Evidence by Video Link. And that is to protect the same, the first speaker stood up here, the bill is sterile, the bill will do nothing to protect women, and then wants to vote against us allowing women victims the opportunity to not have to give a testimony in court. That is what this bill is doing. It allows a victim, a child, a woman, anyone who feels intimidated in going to a court to face the person who may have committed that crime against them, to sit down and do it via video link. Why do you still want to force, go outside there and explain to the population why you still want to force victims to have to go into court, in a magistrate's court, and have the person who perpetrated a crime standing 6 feet behind them, when this bill is now providing that you could be in a safe room providing evidence via video link. Read the bill. Don't just come here and read a speech. Stop being hypocrites. This also, Madam Speaker, this bill also provides now for the CCTV, the topic that they love, CCTV, throw the CCTV, throw the CCTV. But the population knows that the CCTV contract they love to refer to, we have saved $700 million in terminating it. This bill at Division 5, 12AG, of video recording recorded by means of closed-circuit television camera shall be admissible as evidence. So for this purpose, I expect the member for Urupuch East to support, because he believes in the use of CCTV. And that is what this does. So why you want to resist that? Is it that you're trying to protect somebody in the criminal justice system who's currently charged and going to be prosecuted using CCTV evidence? Is that what? And also what this bill does, and I was very happy and impressed to see it, it also does it with respect to civil proceedings. So it's not only on the criminal law side. Section 8, 40, Clause 8 of this bill introduces a new section 14 to the Evidence Act that says, 41, in any civil proceedings, nothing in any written law or the common law shall apply to deny the admissibility of an electronic record in evidence or the sole ground that's an electronic record. And that is when I understood. That is when I understood the resistance to this. That is when I understood that a member on the other side was there in the newspapers here and not coming to support it. Well, there's a standing order that you must declare conflict. And I know they don't like to declare conflict and recuse themselves. But if there's any member who's going to be affected by that particular clause, that particular piece of law, that there's civil action, and the civil action now will allow the electronic means for the same types of cases the Attorney General spoke about, complex fraud, use of cell phone, text messages, bring this, bring that, this check, that check, pave this, pave that. Do it just before election. And now begun, Madam Speaker, to understand what maybe is part of the reason for the resistance. But you see, and I say this without fear of contradiction, as a citizen of this country, and as a person who practiced extensively in the courts of Trinidad and Tobago and a few cases in the Privy Council, this is good legislation, Madam Speaker. This is legislation that will allow the criminal justice system to be that bit more efficient. This is legislation that does protect the vulnerable in our society. This is legislation that also assists in the civil trials. But to say that this legislation doesn't protect the vulnerable women and does nothing for the women or the children, etc., is a complete fallacy, Madam Speaker, and I reject it outright. And as a member for Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West, and a citizen of this great Twin Island state, I give my full support to this bill here today.
Member for Honourable East.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to join this important debate on this